Ever find yourself daydreaming about, like, I don't know, cruising the ocean on a super yacht?
Who hasn't? Right.
But it always seemed so, well, out of reach for most of us.
Definitely. Like something only celebrities and, billionaires got to experience.
Exactly. But the world of super yachts is changing. And believe it or not, sustainability is playing a big role.
It's kind of surprising, right? You don't usually think of luxury yachts and eco-consciousness as going hand in hand.
That's what we're diving into today.
We've got a really interesting mix of sources to unpack, from articles in Boat International and Superyacht Investor to some clips from those futuristic ocean living podcasts you mentioned.
Yeah, those podcasts were wild, talking about underwater super yacht gardens and stuff. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What exactly are we talking about when we say super yacht?
Well, we're not talking about your average little sailboat here. To be considered a super yacht, a vessel usually has to be at least 40 meters long. That's like, picture a basketball court on the water. And of course, it has to be decked out with every luxury imaginable.
Okay, so more like a floating mansion than a weekend getaway boat.
Exactly.
But what I find fascinating is how the whole concept of a super yacht has evolved, especially when it comes to sustainability.
It's a trend we're seeing in a lot of industries, actually, but it's particularly interesting in the superyacht world.
Hmm.
Early superyachts, back in the early 20th century, were all about, well, extravagance. They were a way to show off wealth and opulence without much thought given to efficiency, let alone their environmental impact.
It's kind of like the early days of cars, right?
Perfect analogy.
Big gas-guzzling engines were the norm. Nobody was thinking about fuel efficiency back then.
Exactly. But just like we've seen a huge shift toward electric cars and hybrids in the automotive industry, the superyacht world is undergoing a similar transformation.
So, are you saying that super yachts are going green?
In a way, yes. There's a growing awareness among both yacht builders and owners about the importance of sustainability. And it's not just about appearances. This shift in mindset is driving some truly innovative designs and technologies.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, take hybrid propulsion systems, for instance.
I was reading about those in Boat International. Some of these new super yachts are combining diesel engines with electric motors.
Right. And that means they're relying less on fossil fuels, which is a huge win for the environment.
Yeah, using less fossil fuel, that's got to be better for the oceans, right?
Absolutely. It means fewer greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to ocean acidification.
Ocean acidification.
That's a big problem for marine ecosystems.
Right, right. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? These luxurious vessels, which, let's be honest, haven't always been the most eco-friendly, could actually end up playing a role in protecting the very environment they cruise through.
It's an interesting paradox. And it's not just about the engines either. We're seeing a big increase in the use of sustainable materials, too.
Like what? What kind of materials are we talking about here?
Well, for example, some yacht builders are now using recycled aluminum for the hull of the boat.
Recycled aluminum. That's pretty cool.
And they're using recycled teak alternatives for the decking.
I was actually really interested in the recycled teak. The article mentioned that it's not only eco-friendly, but also super durable and requires less maintenance than traditional teak.
Exactly. And that's a key point here. Sustainability and practicality don't have to be at odds. In fact, these new materials are often more durable, higher performing, and more resilient, which is a huge selling point for yacht owners who want the best of the best.
It's amazing to think that sustainability is becoming like a selling point in the luxury yacht market. Who would have guessed?
It's a fascinating shift, and it goes beyond just materials and engines. We're also seeing a lot of super yachts incorporating things like solar panels.
Oh, yeah, the solar panels. I can just imagine, like lounging on the deck, soaking up the sun, and powering the entire yacht with those panels.
Exactly. Talk about luxury with a conscience. It's a far cry from those old-school super yachts that guzzled fuel and relied on noisy generators.
Speaking of a far cry, this whole idea of self-sufficiency reminds me of those futuristic podcasts you shared. Remember those?
Ah, yes, the ones where we delve into the world of super yachts as, like, self-sustaining ecosystems.
Exactly. I mean, the idea of onboard hydroponic gardens blew my mind. One podcast, I think it was Oceanic Horizons, even talked about aquaponic systems where you're basically growing your food using fish waste. It's like a whole ecosystem on a yacht.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
Right. But they were saying that it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Hydroponics is already being used in cities and even some restaurants. So why not on a super yacht?
I guess the biggest question is, how do you fit a whole farm on a boat, right?
That, and I imagine there's some serious engineering challenges to overcome. But hey, if they can put a car in space, maybe a floating farm isn't that far off.
True, true. And what about those super yachts with the submersible capabilities? Imagine exploring a coral reef or a shipwreck without even leaving your luxury vessel.
Don't even get me started on those. I think I spent a good hour on YouTube after our last conversation just watching videos of those things in action. It's like something straight out of James Bond.
Well, that particular technology comes with its own set of challenges. I mean, you're essentially talking about designing a vessel that can withstand the pressure of both the open ocean and deep sea exploration, not to mention the safety regulations involved.
Yeah, I bet those regulations are no joke.
Oh.
But still, it's an incredible feat of engineering.
Absolutely. It's pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
You know, it's funny. We've been talking about design, technology, sustainability, but we haven't even touched on the business side of things. I mean, this is still an industry, right?
A multi-billion-dollar industry, in fact. And like any other industry, it's driven by market forces.
That's where those articles from Superyacht Investor come in, right? I have to admit, some of that financial stuff went over my head, but I did find some pretty interesting trends. For instance, did you know that one brokerage firm, Edmiston, reported over €1 billion in sales this year alone?
Yes, and that number really highlights the strength of the superyacht market, even in uncertain economic times.
It's crazy. It's like a whole other world out there, a world of luxury and, eye-watering sums of money. But it's not all about brand new superyachts, is it?
Not at all. The market for pre-owned superyachts is booming as well. In fact, Feedship, which is a major player in the industry, they've even launched a whole department dedicated to reselling pre-owned yachts.
So it's kind of like the car market, with both new and used options available.
Exactly. And just like with cars, there are some good deals to be had in the pre-owned market.
But what's driving this trend toward pre-owned yachts? Is it just about the price tag, or are there other factors at play?
Well, price is definitely a factor, even for the ultra-wealthy. But it's not always just about saving a few million euros. Sometimes it's about convenience. Buying pre-owned can be a much faster way to get your hands on a yacht, especially if you don't want to wait years for a new one to be built.
So it's kind of like, you don't want to be stuck with a flip phone when everyone else has the latest smartphone, right? Even if it's pre-owned, you want something that feels current, up to date.
Exactly. And I think that's where this ties back to sustainability. Buyers, even in the pre-owned market, are starting to look for yachts with those eco-friendly features, hybrid engines, solar panels, the works.
Because those features, they add value, right? Like,
Yeah.
having solar panels on your yacht isn't just good for the environment, it's also a desirable feature.
Absolutely. It's becoming a selling point. And as more buyers demand those features in the pre-owned market, it sends a clear message to the yacht builders, right? They'll be more likely to prioritize sustainability in their new designs if they know it will increase the resale value down the line.
It's a win-win, really. Better for the planet and good for business. Who knew we'd find ourselves discussing the intersection of luxury yachts and environmentalism today?
It just goes to show you sustainability is becoming a factor in all sorts of unexpected places.
It really is. Well, I think we've sailed through a lot of interesting territory today, haven't we?
We have. We've talked about everything from the history of superyacht design to some pretty wild futuristic concepts.
Underwater gardens, submersible capabilities. It's mind-blowing to think about what the future holds for this industry.
And what about you, listening in? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah. Would you ever consider living on a superyacht, even if it was just for a little while?
What aspects of life on land would you miss the most? Or maybe the business side of things is more your speed.
Whatever your takeaway, we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about.
The world of superyachts might seem a million miles away for most of us.
Okay, maybe more like €1 billion away.
Right. But the conversations we're having about sustainability, innovation, those are relevant to all of us no matter where we live or how we choose to travel.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and hey, you never know, maybe we'll bump into each other out on the open water one day.
Fair winds.
And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the articles and podcasts we talked about today. See you next time.